The Germans made French people pay for their own occupation. Literally 400 million francs per day. That's about $20 million in today's money. Just for the privilege of being conquered and controlled. All right, let's head back to 1940 France. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable, seriously. Adjust those pillows. Pull up that blanket. Because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. The distant rumble of engines pulls you from sleep. Your eyes open to a dingy Parisian apartment in June 1940. The first thing that hits you is the sour smell of fear that hangs in the air, mixing with the usual sense of coffee substitute and coal dust that cling to the worn furniture. Unlike your warm bed right now, you're lying on a thin, lumpy mattress. The springs poking into your back through warm cotton ticking. The engines are getting louder. You stumble to the window, pushing aside the yellowed lace curtain. Paris is unnaturally quiet this morning. No vendors calling, no children playing, just this growing mechanical growl. They're here. The words come from behind you. Mama stands in the doorway, her face pale, hair still in pin curls from the night before. The Germans have reached Paris. You're Emily Beaumont, 16 years old, and your world is about to change forever. Don't go to the window, your father warns. Entering the room, Henry Beaumont is a shopkeeper, a veteran of the Great War, with a permanent limp from Verdun. They'll be coming down Avenue de la Republique soon, but you can't help yourself. You peek anyway, and there they are. The first motorcycles with sidecars, then the rumbling tanks. The trucks full of soldiers in field gray uniforms. The Wehrmacht has arrived in Paris. It's June 14th, 1940. France has fallen. I never thought I'd see this, your father says, his voice hollow. Not in my lifetime. Not after what we sacrificed in the last war. For weeks. You've been hearing rumors. The German army slicing through the Ardennes. The panicked government fleeing to Bordeaux. The declaration of Paris as an open city to avoid bombardment. But somehow, seeing those gray uniforms on your street makes it real in a way radio bulletins never could. What do we do now? Your brother Thomas asks. He's 19. Precisely the age the Germans might find useful. We survive, your father says simply. Whatever it takes, that becomes the family motto in the days that follow. Whatever it takes, you watch as the swastika flag rises over public buildings. German officers requisition the best hotels. Signs in German appear alongside French ones. Posters announce new regulations. Curfew at 9 o'clock p.m. No gatherings of more than 3 people. Radios to be registered, shoes to wear yellow stars. The occupation begins with an eerie politeness. German soldiers pay for what they take from shops, though the exchange rate has been artificially set to favor them enormously. 1 German mark is worth 20 francs. Highway robbery that lets even the lowest-ranking German private buy up luxury goods Parisians can barely afford. They're looting us with fountain pens instead of guns. Your father mutters as a German officer pays a pittance for the finest cognac in his shop. You learn new routines quickly. Blackout curtains must be in place before nightfall. Not a sliver of light can escape to guide Allied bombers. The family gathers around the radio each night, listening to both the approved German broadcasts and, when you dare, the forbidden BBC transmissions from London. With your father standing watch at the window, the voice of Free France, the announcer says, before the distinctive notes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. ... V for victory in Morse code. A small act of defiance in your darkened apartment. 1 week after the occupation begins, your mother stands in line for 4 hours to get bread. When she returns home, her face is grim. They've announced rationing, she says. Starting tomorrow, your father laughs bitterly. So it begins. First they take our country, then our food. The first ration cards appear. Category A for adults. 350 grams of bread per day, 500 grams of sugar, and 350 grams of meat per month. Not enough to live on, barely enough to survive. And that's only if the shops have anything to sell. I remember stories my grandmother told about the Prussian occupation in 1870. Your father says that night. Voice low. But this will be different. They don't just want our resources, they want our souls. The changes come rapidly after that. Streets renamed. Clocks set forward an hour to match Berlin time. The physical presence of the Germans grows. Soldiers billeted in private homes. Officers taking over the best apartments. Your family is lucky for now. Your apartment is too small and modest to interest the German authorities. But your neighbor, Monsieur Leifer, isn't so fortunate. A German captain has taken his front room, and now the old man sleeps on a cot in his own kitchen. He's actually quite polite, Monsieur Leifer says with a shrug when you encounter him on the stairs. Showed me pictures of his children. Like he's on some kind of holiday instead of, well, that's how it is in these early days. Individual Germans might be civilized, even friendly, but the occupation itself tightens like a noose. One morning you go to the bakery and find the line stretching around the block. By the time you reach the front, there's nothing left. This becomes a daily occurrence, the eternal hunt for food. You learn which shops might have eggs, which ones might have a bit of butter hidden under the counter for regular customers. The black market is already starting. Your father tells you one night. People charging 10 times the normal price. We won't do that unless we must. We're not profiteers. His principles will be tested sooner than he thinks. August brings sweltering heat, with windows blacked out at night. Your apartment becomes an oven. People sleep on balconies. In parks when they can get away with it before curfew. The Germans seem unfazed, still in their wool uniforms. Still marching with precision down the boulevards. Machines, your brother Thomas mutters. They're like machines, Thomas worries you. He's been disappearing for hours, coming home with his jaw set in anger. When you ask where he's been, he simply says, making friends. You know what that means. Resistance, the word nobody says aloud. Your mother knows too. You catch her searching his room one day. I won't lose him, she says when she sees you watching. Not to them. September brings a new reality. The Germans and Vichy government announce that France has been divided. The North and West, including Paris, under direct German control. The South under the puppet Vichy regime, led by Marshal Pétain, the hero of Verdun, now transformed into Hitler's administrator. Collaboration. Your father spits the word like poison. They're calling it collaboration. You soon see what collaboration means. Some Parisians adapt too eagerly to the new order. The manager of the cafe on the corner now saves his best tables for German officers. Madame Rousseau, down the street, boasts about her new German boyfriend. The newspaper editor who lives in the building across from yours begins publishing pro-German articles. Remember their faces, your father says quietly. All of them. October brings the first real food shortages. The vegetable market that was once bursting with produce now offers a few withered carrots. Some unripe potatoes. Meat appears once a week at most. Your mother learns to make soups from almost nothing. Water. A few vegetables. Herbs grown in window boxes. At least we have bread, she says, carefully slicing the daily ration into precise portions. But even bread becomes scarce. The German army takes the best flour for itself. What remains for Parisians is a grayish loaf that tastes of sawdust. Your father's shop struggles. German regulations require him to reserve his best merchandise for occupying forces. What remains are the dregs he can barely sell to his French customers. We can't go on like this, he tells your mother one night when he thinks you're asleep. The winter will be brutal. What choice do we have? She asks. There's always a choice, he replies. The next day, your father closes the shop early. When he returns home, he's carrying a package wrapped in newspaper. Real coffee, he says, unwrapping the bundle to reveal the brown beans you haven't seen in months. And sugar, white sugar. Where did you get this? Your mother asks, her eyes wide. Best not to ask, he says, but we'll eat tonight. A real meal. The black market, the system outside the system. Your principled father has crossed a line he swore he wouldn't. But principles don't fill empty stomachs. That night, you feast relatively speaking. Coffee that doesn't taste of acorns or chicory. A thin slice of ham your father produced from somewhere. White bread instead of the gray loaves. It's not the abundance of pre-war days, but it feels like a miracle. We won't speak of where this came from, your father says. Not outside this room, November arrives with biting cold. Coal is rationed severely, just enough to heat one room for a few hours each day. Your family gathers in the kitchen, the warmest spot in the apartment, huddled in coats and blankets. The Germans get all the coal they want, Thomas says bitterly. Watching his breath fog in the kitchen air, you're wearing 3 layers of clothing, sleeping under every blanket in the house, and still the cold seeps into your bones. Your father develops a cough that doesn't go away. Your mother's hands are chapped and raw from washing clothes in icy water. And still the Germans march down your street each morning, looking well-fed and warm in their wool coats. One day you're standing in line for your bread ration when a well-dressed woman walks to the front. Ignoring the queue, she speaks briefly to the baker, hands him something, and leaves with a large loaf. Collaborator, the woman behind you hisses, sleeping with a German officer. They get special treatment. You begin to notice more of them. The French who have decided their best chance of survival is to embrace the occupation. They eat at restaurants where no ration cards are required. They wear new clothes while everyone else patches and mends. They never stand in line. There are 2 Frances now, your father says when you tell him what you saw. Those who resist and those who collaborate, and a lot of people caught in between, just trying to survive. December brings the darkest days. Both literally and figuratively, electricity is severely rationed. Your apartment is dark by 7 o'clock p.m., save for a single dim bulb in the kitchen. You go to bed early because there's nothing else to do in the darkness, huddled together for warmth. Christmas approaches with little to celebrate. Your mother somehow produces a small chicken, you don't ask how, and makes a feast that almost feels normal. For dessert, there's a cake made with hoarded sugar and the last of the real chocolate your father had hidden in the shop. To better days, your father toasts, raising a glass of watered-down wine. To France, Thomas adds, his eyes hard. You notice your brother has a new scar on his hand. When you ask about it later, he shrugs. Caught it on a nail. You don't believe him. But you don't press. The less you know about certain things, the safer you all are. New Year's Eve, 1940, half a year of occupation behind you. Who knows how many ahead? Your family sits in the kitchen, the only heated room, listening to the distant sounds of German officers celebrating in the requisitioned hotel down the street. They think they've won, your father says softly. They think this is permanent, isn't it? You ask, the weight of 6 months under Nazi rule crushing your hope. Your father shakes his head. Nothing is permanent, Emily. Not even this. As the new year of 1941 begins, you have no idea what's coming. The hunger will get worse. The cold will deepen. The divisions between collaborator and resistor will sharpen into deadly rivalries. And your family will face choices you never imagined having to make. The clock strikes midnight in German-occupied Paris. A new year begins in shadows. You huddle closer to your family, the 4 of you against the world, and try to believe your father's words. Asterisk, nothing is permanent, not even this. But the occupation has only just begun. Outside, the sound of German boots on cobblestones echoes through the dark streets of Paris. Inside, you whisper together, planning how to survive tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, one day at a time. That's all anyone can do now. You look at your family gathered around the dim light and make a silent promise. Whatever it takes, you'll survive this together. Whatever it takes, by January 1941, Paris has transformed into a ghost of itself. The once vibrant city now sits gray and quiet under the weight of occupation and winter snow. Your bed in your warm room feels miles away from the Beaumont family apartment, where the cold has become a living, breathing enemy. Get up, your mother whispers, shaking you gently. The bread line starts early today. If we wait too long, there will be nothing left. Your breath clouds in the frigid air of the bedroom. The windows are frosted from the inside, delicate ice patterns crawling across the glass. This winter is the coldest in decades, your mother adds. Because of course it is, as if occupation wasn't enough. Nature decided to pile on. You dress quickly, layering every piece of clothing you own. Wool socks, and another pair over them, 2 sweaters under your coat, a scarf wrapped twice around your face. Your fingers are already stiff with cold as you button your coat. The kitchen is marginally warmer. Your mother has lit the small coal stove, using precisely measured amounts from your dwindling supply. The entire family's weekly coal ration now lasts barely 3 days. Thomas didn't come home last night, she says quietly, her eyes darting to your father, who sits at the table nursing a cup of something that's definitely not coffee, though it's hot and brown. Your father's face gives nothing away. He'll be fine. He's a smart boy, but you know he's worried. Thomas has been disappearing more frequently, sometimes for hours, sometimes days. Your brother is involved in something dangerous. Resistance activities no one speaks about directly. We need to go, your mother says to you, tying her headscarf. Henry, try to fix that leak in the roof before it gets worse. We'll bring back whatever we can find. The apartment building stairwell is even colder than your flat, a frozen tunnel leading to the street. Your neighbor, Madame Laurent, passes you, her face pinched with cold and hunger. She nods but doesn't speak. No one has energy for pleasantries anymore. Outside, the city is transformed. Snow muffles the sounds. But it can't hide the evidence of occupation. German military vehicles roll down streets while Parisians trudge through snow on foot. Bicycles have become precious commodities since petrol is reserved almost exclusively for German use. This way, your mother says, tugging you down a side street. I heard DuPont might have eggs today. The line at the bakery stretches around the corner. People stomping their feet against the cold. You take your place at the end, knowing you might stand here for 3 hours for a loaf of gray bread that barely qualifies as food. Did you hear about the Martin girl? A woman whispers behind you, living with a German officer now. Her family's got heat and real food while the rest of us freeze. Disgusting, another woman mutters. I'd rather starve. Easy to say, harder to live by. Collaboration takes many forms in occupied Paris, from the political down to the desperately personal. Hunger makes principles flexible. A German patrol marches past, their boots crunching in the snow. Unlike the French, they look well fed, their uniforms clean and pressed, their cheeks full and ruddy in the cold. One soldier glances at the bread line, and you catch something in his eyes. Is it pity? Contempt? Does it matter? Don't look at them, your mother whispers. Never catch their eye. 3 hours later, you finally reach the front of the line. The baker looks exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. He's been working since 3 o'clock, with inadequate flour and fuel. Beaumont, your mother says, sliding her ration card across the counter. 2 Category A, 1 Category E. The baker's eyes flicked to the back of his shop. Then back to your mother. Nothing left but pain to famine today. Made with chestnut flour and other things. It's all I can get. Pain to famine. The famine bread made with whatever can be found. Sometimes beans, potatoes, ground chestnuts. Sometimes things no one asks about. Your mother nods. Whatever you have. He hands over a small, dense loaf that feels like a brick. It will taste like one too, but it's better than nothing. Your mother slips it into her bag, like it's gold. Try Madame Fournier, the baker whispers. She might have other things. Tell her Gilbert sent you. Your mother's face reveals nothing, but you know what this means. Madame Fournier operates on the black market. Another line to stand in. But for food that doesn't come with ration cards, just astronomical prices. On the way there, you pass the Café Lutetia, once a neighborhood bistro, now requisitioned as a German officer's mess. Through the windows, you see a scene from another world. Germans laughing, eating real food, drinking wine. A waiter carries a platter with what looks like an actual roast chicken. Your stomach clenches painfully. When was the last time you tasted meat? November? December? Don't look, your mother says again, pulling you along. Madame Fournier's shop is actually the back room of a laundry. Your mother knocks in a particular pattern, and the door opens a crack. Gilbert sent us, she says. The door opens wider, revealing a small room where 6 or 7 people wait. Real commerce happens here without ration cards, without official prices, without Germans skimming off the top. Butter? Your mother asks when it's your turn. Madame Fournier names a price that makes your mother's face tighten. But she nods and counts out the money. Nearly a week's wages for a lump of butter the size of your fist. And eggs, please, just 2. Another exorbitant price. Another painful payment, but you'll eat tonight. A luxury in this Paris. On the walk home, your mother's bag guarded like the crown jewels. She grabs your arm, suddenly pulling you into a doorway. A German staff car rolls past, stopping in front of your apartment building. Wait, she whispers. 2 German officers exit the car and enter your building. Your mother's grip tightens on your arm. They might be looking for Thomas, she says. Her voice barely audible. You wait, heart pounding, for 20 minutes before the Germans emerge again. They're empty-handed, faces unreadable as they drive away. Only then does your mother release her breath. Let's go. Your father will be worried when you reach your apartment. Your father is pacing near the window. I saw them, he says without preamble, looking for young men for labor service. The service du travail obligatoire, the forced labor program that sends French workers to German factories. It's why Thomas stays away now. Being caught would mean deportation to Germany. We got food, your mother says, changing the subject as she unpacks her treasures. Real butter. And 2 eggs. Your father's eyes widen slightly. How much? She tells him, and his face falls, but he doesn't criticize. He knows the choice was this or hunger. I'll add more water to the soup, she says. Heading to the kitchen. Make it stretch further. That night, dinner is thin vegetable soup with pieces of pain de famine floating in it, but with the miracle addition of a sliver of butter melting on top. It's the richest meal you've had in weeks. I saw Monsieur Leffer today, your father says as you eat. The German captain billeted with him was transferred to the Eastern Front. The implications hang in the air. The Germans are fighting on a new front. Russia, the war is expanding. Does that mean they'll leave Paris? You ask. Your father shakes his head. No. It means they'll demand more from us to support their new campaign. More food, more labor, more everything. He's right. February brings new restrictions, new demands. The ration cards provide even less food. The lines grow longer. More young men disappear. either into hiding or taken for forced labor in Germany. Your school has been closed for weeks due to lack of heating. You spend your days helping your mother in the endless quest for food, or huddled in the apartment with books read by candlelight to save electricity. One afternoon, when the sun briefly emerges to melt some of the snow, you're walking home when you see a crowd gathered on your street. As you get closer, your stomach drops. German military police are conducting a raid, checking papers, searching bags, looking for contraband or people in hiding. You could turn around, but they might notice. Better to walk calmly, to act normal. Your papers are in order. You have nothing illegal. Your mother left her black market purchases at home. A German soldier gestures for your papers as you approach. He looks impossibly young, maybe only a few years older than you. "Fräulein," he says, holding out his hand. You give him your identity card, trying to keep your hand from trembling. He studies it and looks at your face. "Where are you coming from?" "The library," you lie. You are actually meeting a friend whose brother has connections to get soap. A luxury now. He looks at you for a long moment, then hands back your papers. "Go home, curfew is earlier today." 6 o'clock. You nod and continue walking, feeling his eyes on your back. Only when you reach your building do you allow yourself to breathe normally again. Inside, you find your father listening to the radio. Not the approved German broadcasts, but the BBC, the volume barely audible. He quickly switches it off when you enter. "They're checking papers on the street," you tell him. He nods. "They found a resistance cell in the 11th arrondissement. 2 German officers shot. They're searching the whole city now." That night, Thomas doesn't come home again. Your mother paces until midnight, then sits motionless by the window until dawn. March brings no relief. The cold maintains its grip on the city. Food becomes even scarcer. Your mother has lost so much weight, her wedding ring slips off her finger. Your father's cough worsens. You're all constantly hungry, constantly cold. The Germans seem immune to the hardships they've imposed. They requisition more buildings, more goods. The divide between occupier and occupied grows starker every day. One morning, there's a knock at your door. Not the heavy pounding of German boots, but a neighbor's urgent tap. Your father opens it to find Monsieur Mercier, the building's caretaker. "German patrols on the street," he whispers. "They're going door to door." Something about radio transmitters. Your father's face pales. The illegal radio is hidden behind a false wall panel, but a thorough search would find it. How long do we have? Maybe 15 minutes. They're starting at the bottom floor. Your father moves with surprising speed for a man with a bad leg. He retrieves the radio from its hiding place and hands it to you. "Take this to Madame Benoit on the top floor. She's deaf. They won't search her place thoroughly. Go out the back way, up the service stairs. You clutch the radio, terrified but determined. If you're caught with it, the consequences would be severe. Deportation at best, execution at worst. The service stairs are narrow and dark. You climb quickly, the radio heavy in your arms. At Madame Benoit's door, you knock in the pattern your father taught you. 3 quick, 2 slow. The old woman opens the door, takes in the situation at a glance, and beckons you inside without a word. She may be deaf, but her wits are sharp, asterisk hide. She mouths, pointing to a wardrobe. You shake your head, handing her the radio instead. She nods, understanding, taking it to a hollow space beneath her floorboards that you glimpse only briefly before she closes it. You race back downstairs, entering your apartment just as the heavy boots sound on the floor below. Your father gives you a questioning look. You nod, mission accomplished. When the Germans knock 20 minutes later, your family is the picture of ordinary life under occupation. Your mother mending clothes, your father reading an approved newspaper, you studying a school book, Nothing suspicious, nothing to find. They search anyway, of course. 2 soldiers and an officer methodically going through every room, opening drawers, looking behind furniture. But they don't find what they're looking for, and eventually they leave that night. Over a dinner of watery soup and a few precious potatoes, your father says, "They'll come back. They always do. And we'll be ready," your mother says, with a determination you haven't heard in her voice for months. April finally brings warmer weather. If not relief from hunger, the snow melts, revealing a Paris worn thin by winter and occupation. Buildings are shabbier. People are thinner. The very fabric of the city frayed at the edges. But with spring comes small acts of defiance. Someone paints a V for victory on a wall overnight. Snippets of La Marseillaise, the forbidden French national anthem, can be heard through open windows, and Thomas returns home briefly one night, thin and haunted looking, but alive. He doesn't say where he's been or what he's done, and no one asks, but he brings news from outside Paris, whispered around the kitchen table. The Germans are struggling in North Africa. The British are holding. America may enter the war. Hope, fragile but real. The occupation might not be forever. Thomas leaves before dawn, hugging each of you fiercely. "I'll be back when I can. Take care of each other." After he's gone, your mother sits at the table, hands clasped tightly. "He's right. We need to take care of each other, and that means we need more food." The next day, she takes you to a new black market contact, not Madame Fournier's back room, but a warehouse near the Seine where more serious trading happens. The prices are even higher, the risks greater, but the selection better. Here, your mother trades the last of her pre-war jewelry, a gold bracelet from her mother, for a small sack of potatoes, some real flour, and a precious tin of sardines. It was just sitting in a drawer. She says when she catches your shocked expression, "We can't eat gold." On the way home, you pass the Café Lutetia again. The same scene of German plenty, the same waiters serving them. But this time you notice something different. One of the waiters, an old man you recognize from the neighborhood, is moving unusually slowly near a German officer's table. As you watch, his hand dips briefly into the officer's coat pocket, then withdraws. Your mother sees it too, and hurries you along. "See nothing. Say nothing," she whispers. That evening, the BBC reports, a German document has been stolen containing information about troop movements. You think of the old waiter and wonder. The resistance is everywhere now. Not just young men like Thomas hiding in the countryside, but ordinary Parisians fighting in small ways. The waiter stealing documents, the baker passing information with the bread, the old deaf woman hiding radios, and your own family surviving day by day, keeping each other alive and as safe as possible in a city under the German boot. May 1941 brings more changes. The rationing system tightens further. But ironically, the black market expands. Your father begins bringing home food from sources he won't discuss. Your mother stops asking where it comes from. "We do what we must," is all he says. One evening, as twilight settles over Paris, you're helping your mother prepare dinner, a thin stew with precious bits of meat from an unknown source, when the air raid sirens begin their mournful wail. "British bombers," your father says, looking up from his newspaper. Everyone to the cellar. You grab the prepared emergency bag, a change of clothes, a bottle of water, a small first aid kit, and follow your parents down to the building's basement. Other families are already there, spreading blankets in their usual spots, settling in for what might be hours. This is the new normal, the rhythm of life under occupation. Hunting for food, avoiding German patrols, hiding from Allied bombs meant to liberate you, but just as capable of killing you, in the dim light of the cellar, surrounded by neighbors who have become a kind of extended family through shared hardship. Your father leans close and whispers, "This won't last forever, Emily. Nothing does. Remember that, above you, bombs fall on the city you love, targeting German installations, but often hitting French homes instead. The cellar shakes, dust filters down from the ceiling, and someone starts to sing softly. An old French folk song, nothing political. Just a reminder of who you are and what remains when everything else is taken." Other voices join in, a quiet chorus in the darkness. German boots may march on the streets above, but here underground, Paris keeps its heart beating, waiting for the day when it can reclaim its streets, its buildings, its very soul. The spring of 1941 crawls forward. The occupation deepens, the hunger sharpens. But so does the resistance, both the organized kind your brother has joined, and the daily kind your family practices just by surviving, by not surrendering who they are despite everything. "We are still here," your father says on a rare good day, when the sun shines and your mother has somehow created a meal that almost satisfies. Still French, still ourselves. That's a victory they can't take from us. And in that moment, huddled around your kitchen table while German patrols pass on the street below, you believe him. You have to. The train rattles and shakes as it carries you away from Paris. Summer 1942, 2 years into the occupation, and your parents have finally made the difficult decision to send you to the countryside. Your father's words echo in your mind. "There's more food there, Emily, and fewer Germans." You press your face against the grimy window glass, watching the bombed-out suburbs give way to rolling fields. The compartment is crowded with other Parisians fleeing the increasingly desperate city, mostly children and elderly being sent to rural relatives. The woman across from you clutches a small suitcase on her lap. "My sister has a farm near Clermont," she tells you, noticing your stare. "I haven't seen her in 3 years. My uncle has a farm in the Oise," you reply. Uncle Marcel, your mother's brother, who wrote saying he could take you in. "Are there many Germans in the countryside?" You ask. The woman's mouth tightens. "They're everywhere now, but fewer eyes watching. If you understand me." You do. In Paris, German soldiers stand on every street corner. Neighbors might be informants. The walls themselves seem to have ears. But in the countryside, there are woods and fields, barns and cellars, places to hide, to resist, to breathe. After 6 hours, the train wheezes to a stop at a small station. Only a handful of passengers disembark. You step onto the platform, clutching your single bag containing everything your parents thought worth sending: clothes, a few books, your identity papers carefully sewn into the lining. "Emily." A tall man waves from the edge of the platform. "Uncle Marcel." You've only met him twice before, but you recognize his bushy mustache like your mother's eyebrows. But on his upper lip, he embraces you quickly, then takes your bag. "Come, the cart is waiting. We should be home before dark." The cart is a horse-drawn wagon. The horse so thin its ribs show through its dull coat. "Gasoline is only for Germans and officials now," Marcel explains as he helps you climb up. "But old Gustav here still runs on hay." He pats the horse's flank affectionately. You notice calluses on his hands, dirt under his fingernails, a farmer's hands. Nothing like your father's shopkeeper's palms. The countryside rolling past is both beautiful and strange to your city eyes. Fields of wheat ripple in the breeze, orchards heavy with unripe fruit, farmhouses with chickens scratching in the yards. "It looks so normal," you say, surprised. Marcel grunts. "Looks can be deceiving. See that field?" He points to golden wheat stretching toward the horizon. 80% goes to the Germans. We keep 20 if we're lucky. Same with the milk, the cheese, the meat. He spits over the side of the wagon. "Bastards take the best. Leave us the scraps on our own land." This is your first glimpse of rural occupation. Different from Paris, but still the same fundamental story. The Germans taking everything, the French finding ways to survive with what remains. Your mother said you've been hungry in Paris, Marcel says after a while. You nod. Remembering the gnawing emptiness that has become so familiar, you barely notice it anymore. Well, we eat better here. Not like before the war, but better than the city. You'll get some meat on those bones. You wind along country roads for nearly 2 hours. Occasionally, Marcel tips his hat to farmers working in the fields or women hanging laundry outside stone cottages. Once he abruptly turns down a side road when he spots a German truck in the distance. Better not to be seen if you don't have to be, he explains. Finally, as the sun begins to set, you arrive at a stone farmhouse nestled against a backdrop of rolling hills. A woman emerges from the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Marie. Marcel calls. Look who's finally arrived. Aunt Marie is your mother's sister, though they look nothing alike. Where your mother is thin and angular, Marie is round and solid. Her smile crinkles her entire face as she envelops you in an embrace that smells of bread and herbs. Mon Dieu, your skin and bones, she exclaims, holding you at arm's length. Come inside. Dinner is almost ready. Inside, the farmhouse is warm but comfortable. A large wooden table dominates the main room, with a cast iron stove radiating blessed heat. A girl about your age sits shelling peas into a bowl. This is Claudette, our daughter, Marie says. She'll show you where you'll sleep after we eat. Dinner is simple but shockingly abundant to your Paris-accustomed eyes. A soup thick with vegetables, fresh bread, real bread, not the gray substitute you've been eating for years. A small portion of rabbit, which makes your mouth water just looking at it. And to finish, a bowl of fresh cherries. Is this normal? You ask, embarrassed but unable to hide your amazement. Marcel and Marie exchange glances. This is a good day, Marcel says carefully. We don't eat like this every night, but we don't starve. Later, lying in the small attic bedroom you'll share with Claudette, you hear your relatives talking in low voices downstairs. Her parents did the right thing sending her, Marie says. She looks half dead. The city is being squeezed dry, Marcel replies. Pierre from the village came back from Paris last week. Says people are collapsing in the streets from hunger. Will it be any better here by winter? The requisitions keep increasing. We'll manage, we always do. And we have other resources. The conversation drops to whispers you can't make out. And eventually, you drift into the deepest sleep you've had in months. Your stomach full for the first time in memory. Morning comes early on a farm. You're awakened by a rooster crowing and the sounds of movement downstairs. Claudette is already gone from her bed. You dress quickly and head down to find the family at breakfast. More bread, some cheese, and bowls of a hot drink that smells like roasted grain. Not real coffee, Marie apologizes, seeing you sniff at it. But it's hot and fills the stomach. What can I do to help? You ask, suddenly aware you're another mouth to feed in a household already struggling under occupation. You can gather eggs with Claudette, Marcel says, and learn to milk the cow. Everyone works here. The next few days bring a whirlwind of new experiences. You learn to collect still warm eggs from beneath irritable hens. How to pull firm but gentle on a cow's teats to bring forth streams of milk. How to identify weeds among the vegetable rows. Your city hands grow blisters, then calluses. But you also learn the unspoken rules of rural occupation. Always keep a little back, Claudette tells you as you help her harvest beans. The Germans count the big sacks we bring to the collection point, but they don't know exactly how much each field yields. So we keep some hidden. Isn't that dangerous? Claudette shrugs. Everything's dangerous now, but which is worse? Risking punishment or watching your family starve? You learn about the hiding places, false walls in the root cellar, hollow spaces beneath floorboards, even caches buried in the fields themselves. The official production goes to the collection centers where German officials meticulously record every kilogram. The unofficial production keeps the family alive. The trick, Marcel explains one evening, is to give them enough that they don't get suspicious. Not so much that you have nothing left for yourself. It's a precarious balance, one that every farmer in the region has learned to maintain. You've been at the farm for 2 weeks when you witness your first act of serious resistance. You're helping Marcel repair a fence in the south pasture when a man emerges from the woods bordering the property. He's dirty, thin, with several days of beard growth, and he's limping badly. Marcel straightens, eyes narrowing, then relaxes as he seems to recognize the man. "Jean," he says simply. The man approaches cautiously, eyes darting around at Marcel. "I need help." Marcel nods toward you. "My niece from Paris. She's safe." Jean gives you a searching look, then turns back to Marcel. "Group of us hiding in the old quarry. Germans nearly found us yesterday. Henry took a bullet in the leg." "How many?" "8 now. 2 more joined last night. Young boys running from the labor draft." Marcel is silent for a long moment, then nods. "Come to the barn after dark. Back entrance. I'll have what I can spare." Jean melts back into the woods without another word. Marcel turns to find you staring. "You saw nothing," he says firmly. "Heard nothing, understand?" You nod, a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through you. The resistance the Maquis, as people have started calling the rural fighters, is not just a rumor or a hope. It's real, and your uncle is involved. That night, after everyone else is in bed, you watch from your attic window as Marcel carries sacks to the barn. He emerges empty-handed an hour later. You never see Jean or anyone else. But the next morning, the sacks are gone. "I won't lie to you," Marcel says when he catches you looking questioningly at him over breakfast. "It's dangerous, what we do, but there are boys your brother's age hiding in those woods. Someone's sons, they're fighting for all of us." A week later, German trucks rumble down the road past the farm, more than usual. Marcel watches them from the doorway, his face grim. "They're hunting the Maquis," he says. "Someone must have talked that afternoon." Smoke rises from the direction of a village about 5 kilometers away. The acrid scent carries even to the farm. Reprisals is all Marcel will say. You learn the details later from whispers at the market in town. The Germans found a Maquis hideout, shot 3 fighters, captured 2 more. Then they went to the nearest village, Valence, accused them of supporting the resistance, and made an example. Houses burned. The mayor and schoolteacher executed in the town square. 20 young men loaded onto trucks, destination unknown. The mood in the countryside changes after Valence. Fear hangs heavier in the air. People speak in whispers even when no Germans are present. Marcel no longer takes the direct road to town, instead winding through back lanes and forest paths. But resistance continues, perhaps even stronger now. More young men disappear into the woods to join the Maquis rather than submit to the labor draft. And not just men. You spot young women sometimes, carrying baskets into the forest that seem too heavy for mushroom gathering. August brings the harvest, and with it, German officials watching closely. They station soldiers in the fields to ensure nothing is held back. Farmers work under the eyes and guns of the occupiers, harvesting crops they will barely taste themselves. "Look at them," a neighbor farmer mutters, as you help load wheat onto a wagon. They don't know the first thing about farming, but they tell us how to do it on land our families have worked for generations. The Germans have established quotas for every farm. Impossible quotas that no one can meet without starving. But the farmers have become experts at deception. Fields that once produced 10 tons now mysteriously yield only 6. Cows inexplicably give less milk. Chickens lay fewer eggs. It's the occupation, Marcel tells the German agricultural officer with a straight face. Animals sense the disruption. They don't produce well under stress. The officer clearly doesn't believe him, but can't prove otherwise. He adjusts the quota downward, but only slightly. Marcel will still need to dip into the hidden stores to meet it. And then there's the relave, the prisoner exchange program the Germans have implemented. For every 3 French workers who volunteer to work in German factories, 1 French prisoner of war will supposedly be released. Posters promoting this program appear even in the small village near the farm. Volunteer, the posters proclaim. Bring our soldiers home. Volunteer. Marcel scoffs as you pass one such poster in the village square, as if anyone would choose to go to Germany. It's just another way to get forced labor without calling it slavery. Few are fooled by the propaganda. Most young men who can avoid the labor draft do so by hiding, by joining the maquis, by obtaining false papers that show them in protected occupations. September brings word from Paris, a letter from your mother, censored and approved by German authorities, so full of mundane details and empty of real news that you have to read between the lines. Your father's shop continues, though stock is limited, she writes. This means the Germans are taking almost everything. Thomas sends his regards from his new position. Thomas is still alive, still in hiding, or with the resistance. We think of you always and hope you are well fed in the country air. They are still hungry. They hope you are not. You write back just as carefully, telling them about farm life without mentioning the resistance activity. The hidden food stores, the smoke rising from punished villages. October brings a new terror to the countryside, deportations. Not just of resistors, or those avoiding the labor draft, but of Jewish families who had fled to rural areas, thinking themselves safer there than in Paris. The Weiss family had a small house at the edge of the village. One morning, they're simply gone. German police and French gendarmes arrived before dawn, neighbors whisper. Loaded them into trucks, even the children. Where did they take them? You ask Marie. Who's heard the news from the butcher's wife? Marie shakes her head. East, they say, special camps? But no one really knows. The fear spreads through the village like wildfire. Who might be next? What other categories of undesirables might the Germans target? That night, Marcel returns from a secretive meeting in the village with new resolve in his eyes. We're expanding the network, is all he tells Marie. More people are making the right choice now. November brings early snow and news that the labor draft the Service du Travail obligatoire. STO will soon become compulsory for all men aged 18 to 50. No more pretensive volunteering. They need workers desperately, Marcel explains over dinner. Their war in Russia isn't going as planned. This news brings both hope and fear. If the Germans are desperate for labor, perhaps they're not as invincible as they seem. But it also means they'll become more ruthless in their demands on occupied France. Your thoughts turn to Thomas, to your father in Paris. Will they be taken? Will they resist? The uncertainty gnaws at you. Late one night, you're awakened by voices below your window. Slipping out of bed, careful not to wake Claudette. You peek outside to see Marcel talking with several men at the edge of the farmyard. They're loading packages onto horses, not just food this time, but what look like weapons wrapped in cloth. In the morning, Marcel is tight-lipped and tired. When Marie asks him directly where he went, he simply says, "Better you don't know." But that evening, the radio brings news of a German supply train derailed near Limoges. 10 German soldiers killed. Crucial supplies destroyed. No one says anything. But Marie reaches over and squeezes Marcel's hand briefly. December 1942. The winter settles in hard across rural France. Snow blankets the fields. The farmhouse is cold, except for the kitchen where the stove burns what little wood can be spared. You wear layers of clothing to bed, and still shiver through the night. Food remains more plentiful than in Paris, but the German requisitions have increased again. Marcel has had to dip deeper into the hidden stores. What was meant to last until spring might run out by February. "We'll manage," Marie says firmly when you overhear them discussing it. "We always do. Christmas approaches with little festivity. The church in the village will hold midnight mass, but many fear attending. Gatherings are closely watched by the occupation authorities. We'll have our own celebration," Marie declares, "small but ours. On Christmas Eve, she somehow produces a goose. Where it came from, no one asks. There are potatoes, carrots from the cellar, and even a small cake made with precious hoarded sugar and dried fruits. As you sit down to this feast, a knock comes at the door. Marcel tenses, hand moving toward the drawer where you know he keeps a pistol. Marie makes a small, frightened sound. But it's not the Germans. It's the postman, Jules. Red-faced from cold and clearly apologetic about the late hour. "Special delivery from Paris," he says, handing Marcel a small package. "Came on the afternoon train. Thought you'd want it tonight. What with it being Christmas Eve, the package is from your parents. Inside is a letter, again carefully written to avoid censorship, and small gifts. A hair ribbon for you, knitted socks for everyone, and a tiny bottle of real perfume for Marie that makes her eyes well up. Your mother saved this for years," she says, dabbing a precious drop behind her ear. "She knows how I missed such luxuries. That night, sitting around the table with your aunt and uncle and cousin, the goose filling the farmhouse with rich aromas, you realize something has changed in you. Paris seems distant now, almost dreamlike. This farm, these people, this life of constant work and risk and resistance has become your reality. You miss your parents desperately. You worry about Thomas. But there's something else too. A pride in what your rural family is doing. Not just surviving, but fighting back in their own way. Hiding food from the Germans. Helping the Maquis. Maintaining their humanity despite everything. To France," Marcel says, raising his glass of watered wine. "The real France. Not what they've tried to make of her. To France," you echo. And in that moment, you understand what resistance truly means. Not just men with guns in the forest, but ordinary people refusing to surrender their dignity, their culture, their very selves outside. Snow falls silently over occupied France. German patrols roll through darkened villages. Prisoners shiver in camps. Trains carry resources eastward to feed the German war machine. But here in this farmhouse kitchen, something precious remains alive and undefeated. As you climb the stairs to bed that night, your stomach full and your heart strangely light despite everything, you think of your father's words from long ago. Nothing is permanent, not even this. For the first time, you truly believe him. The letter arrives on a gray morning in February 1943. Uncle Marcel's face darkens as he reads it, then wordlessly passes it to you. Your mother's handwriting, shakier than usual. Asterisk, dearest Emily, I pray this finds you well. Your father has received his notice for the STO. He is to report next week for transport to a factory in Germany. Thomas remains absent. The shop has been closed due to lack of inventory. I am considering joining you in the countryside if your uncle permits. With deepest love, Mama, the service du travail obligatoire asterisk. The forced labor draft, it's no longer pretending to be voluntary. Men being shipped to Germany like cattle to work in factories, while German men fight on the front lines. My father is 52, you say, voice barely audible. And his leg, Marcel's face is grim. They're getting desperate, taking older men now, even those not fully healthy. He folds the letter carefully. Of course your mother can come. We'll make room. The German war machine is hungry for workers. Their campaign in Russia isn't going as planned, and they need more men on the front lines, which means they need French workers to replace German factory workers. The Vichy government, ever compliant, has made it legal through the STO. 2 days later, another letter arrives, this one carried not by the regular post, but by a neighbor's cousin who traveled from Paris. Henry is gone, your mother writes. Not using your father's name, in case the letter is intercepted. Asterisk, not where they wanted him to go, but somewhere safer. I will join you next week. Burn this, asterisk Marcel does, right at the kitchen table. Your father has gone into hiding rather than report for the STO. Like thousands of other French men, he's chosen resistance over compliance. Your mother arrives the following Saturday, stepping down from the train looking thin and worn, but somehow stronger than you remember. She embraces you fiercely. You've gained weight, she says with approval. Holding you at arm's length, country living agrees with you. That night, after everyone else has gone to bed, she tells you the full story in whispers. The Germans came to the shop first, looking for your father. He'd already left. A friend warned him they were checking addresses of men who hadn't reported for STO duty. He's with a group of other men from the neighborhood, hiding in an abandoned factory outside the city. Will he be safe? You ask. Your mother's smile is strained. Safer than in Germany. The conditions there. She shakes her head. We've heard stories. Men worked to death, barely fed, beaten if they slow down. And Thomas? You dare to ask. Still with his resistance group. He managed to get a message to me before I left. He's somewhere in the south now. Her voice drops even lower. He's involved in something important, he said. I try not to think about what that means. The next morning, Marcel takes your mother aside for a long conversation. You can guess what they're discussing. The resistance activities happening around the farm. Whether she wants to know details or remain ignorant for her own safety. Later, you find her in the barn, helping Marie collect eggs. There's a new determination in her movements. I've spent too long just trying to survive, she tells you when she notices you watching. It's time to do more. March 1943 brings a new phase of the occupation to rural France. The Germans, frustrated by increasing resistance activity, step up their presence even in small villages. Checkpoints appear on country roads. Patrols stop farmers in their fields, demanding papers. German trucks rumble through the village daily. They're squeezing tighter, Marcel observes one evening. They can feel control slipping away. The news from elsewhere in France supports his assessment. The STO has backfired spectacularly on the Germans and their Vichy collaborators. Instead of providing a steady stream of workers for German factories, it has driven tens of thousands of young Frenchmen into hiding or active resistance. The Maquis groups in the forests are swelling with new recruits. Not just ideological resistors now, but ordinary men escaping forced labor. They need food, weapons, information, and medical supplies. Farms like Marcel's become crucial links in an expanding resistance network. Your mother adapts quickly to farm life and resistance work. Her city skills prove unexpectedly valuable. She can mend clothing better than Marie, and her experience managing your father's shop makes her excellent at inventorying and distributing the supplies Marcel collects for the Maquis. The Germans think women are harmless, she says with grim satisfaction one day as she sews a false bottom into a market basket. They rarely search us thoroughly. Their arrogance is our advantage. April brings spring planting and increased German demands. New quotas are announced, even higher than before. Farmers gather at the village tavern, faces dark with worry. They want more than we can possibly produce. One man complains. And if we don't meet the quotas? Asks another. No one answers. They all know. Punishment, seizure of property, deportation. Marcel returns from the meeting with a new plan. We'll plant the south field with a different strain of wheat, he tells your mother, and Marie. Looks the same to untrained eyes, but yields more per hectare. The Germans won't know the difference when they measure the fields? And the difference in yield? Your mother asks. Goes to our friends in the forest. It's a dangerous game. German agricultural inspectors visit regularly. If they discover the deception, the consequences would be severe. But hunger makes people bold, and the resistance makes them resourceful. In May, disaster nearly strikes. You're hoeing vegetable rows when you hear vehicles on the road. 2 German trucks stop at the farm entrance. A dozen soldiers jump down, led by an officer. You drop the hoe and run for the house. Germans. You call as you burst through the door. Your mother is in the kitchen with Marie, packaging dried beans into small bundles for the maquis. They freeze for one terrifying second, then spring into action. The beans disappear into a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Marie throws a pot of water onto the stove, tossing in vegetables to create an innocent soup. By the time the Germans knock on the door, the kitchen looks perfectly normal. Just 2 women preparing a meal. Marcel meets them outside, his face a mask of rural simplicity. You watch from the window as he responds to the officer's questions, gesturing toward the fields, shrugging in apparent confusion. The soldiers spread out, searching the barn, checking the root cellar, poking pitchforks into haystacks. One approaches the house. Act normal, your mother whispers. We're just a family trying to survive, nothing more. The German soldier who enters is young, barely older than your brother Thomas. He glances around the kitchen, notes you and the 2 women, and asks something in German. We don't speak German, Marie says flatly. He switches to clumsy French. Food? You have extra food? Extra? Marie gives a bitter laugh. With what the requisition officers take, we barely feed ourselves. Monsieur. He looks at the soup on the stove, then at the thin faces watching him warily. Something like discomfort crosses his features. Without another word, he turns and leaves. The Germans depart half an hour later without finding anything incriminating. Only then does Marcel come inside, his face gray with tension. They were looking for a downed British airman, he says. Shot down 3 nights ago. They think he's being hidden by locals. Is he? Your mother asks. Marcel hesitates, then nods. The Laurent farm, 5 kilometers north. We need to warn them the Germans are searching the area. That night, Claudette slips away on a bicycle, ostensibly to visit a school friend. She returns after dark with news that the warning was delivered in time. The airman has been moved to a new hiding place. Sophie's father says he'll be part of the escape line to Spain. She whispers to you later in your shared bedroom. They move them from safe house to safe house all the way to the Pyrenees. June brings unexpected news via the BBC broadcasts you still listen to secretly. The Allies have invaded Sicily. The Germans are being pushed back in Russia for the first time. You can imagine a world where the occupation might actually end. But the Germans respond to these setbacks with increased brutality. Reprisals for resistance activities become more severe. An attack on a German convoy near Limoges results in the execution of 50 French hostages. A village suspected of harboring Mackay fighters is burned to the ground. They're lashing out like wounded animals, Marcel says, which makes them more dangerous than ever. July 1943 brings the whirl of harvest time again. But this year feels different. There's a current of tension, of anticipation running beneath daily activities. Everyone senses that the war has reached a turning point. The Germans are no longer the invincible force they once appeared to be. The changes are visible even in the German soldiers themselves. The fresh-faced young men of 1940 have been replaced by older reservists. Some in their 50s or very young boys who look barely 16. Equipment is shabbier, vehicles often in poor repair. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Marcel observes after a patrol passes the farm, sending their best to the Russian front, leaving us with old men and children. But old men and children with guns are still dangerous. And the German secret police, the Gestapo, have become more active in the countryside, hunting resistance members with cold efficiency. One August morning, you're in the village with your mother when a black car pulls up in the square. 4 men in civilian clothes step out. Their bearing immediately identifies them as Germans, despite their lack of uniforms. Gestapo, your mother whispers, pulling you into a shop doorway. Don't look at them directly. The men enter the mayor's office. 10 minutes later, shouts erupt. The mayor is dragged out, struggling and protesting. He's thrown into the car, which speeds away, leaving the village square silent with shock. He was passing information. A neighbor whispers to your mother as you hurry to finish your shopping. Someone betrayed him. That's the most terrifying part of occupation, never knowing who might be an informant, the baker's apprentice, the postman, the old woman who sits by her window all day, watching everyone's comings and goings. When you return to the farm, Marcel is grim-faced. It's happening all over, he says. They're arresting local officials suspected of resistance ties. Will they come here? You ask, fear clutching at your throat. Marcel and your mother exchange looks. We've been careful, he says finally. But we should be prepared, Marie. Show Emily and Claudette the escape route. That afternoon, Marie takes you and Claudette into the woods behind the farm. She points out a nearly invisible path winding through dense underbrush. If Germans ever come and we tell you to run, you follow this path. It leads to an old charcoal maker's hut, 3 kilometers in. Wait there until someone comes for you. Who will come? Claudette asks. Someone who will say, the cherries are ripe this year. You answer, but the birds have taken most. Then you know they're safe. Passwords, escape routes, hidden messages. The machinery of resistance has become part of your daily life. As normal as feeding chickens or milking cows, September brings another letter from your father, passed through the resistance network, rather than the censored mail. Asterisk, he's now with a Maquis group near Lyon, he writes. Asterisk, mostly men avoiding the Stowe, with a few experienced fighters leading them. The Germans control the roads and villages, but the forests and mountains belong to us. Asterisk, your mother reads the letter with tears in her eyes. Your father, a middle-aged shopkeeper with a bad leg, has become a resistance fighter. The world has turned upside down. Will it ever go back to normal? You ask her that night as you sit mending clothes by lamplight. She considers the question seriously. No, she says finally. Even when the Germans leave, and they will leave, Emily France will be changed forever. We will be changed. You think about this as you stitch a patch onto one of Marcel's work shirts. You've been changed already, from a city girl concerned with school and friends to someone who can milk cows, spot German patrols, and carry messages for the resistance without betraying terror. October 1943 brings rain and mud, making farm work miserable, but also hampering German mobility. Their trucks get stuck on rural roads. Patrols stay closer to villages. The Maquis use the opportunity to expand their control of remote areas. Marcel now spends several nights a week away from the farm, returning muddy and exhausted, but saying nothing about where he's been. Your mother has taken over many of his daily farming duties. Her city hands now as calloused as any farmer's wife. One rainy night, you're awakened by voices in the kitchen below. Creeping down the stairs, you see Marcel has returned with 3 men. All armed, all as muddy and exhausted as he is. The Germans hit the camp near Montmouchet, one is saying. 15 dead, the rest scattered. They had planes, another adds bitterly. How do you hide from planes? We need better weapons, says the third. Hunting rifles won't stop armored cars. Marcel notices you on the stairs. Emily, come down. These men need food before they move on. You help your mother and Marie prepare a meal from precious hidden stores. The men eat ravenously. Barely speaking, when they finish, one of them, older than the others with a scar running down his cheek, looks at you thoughtfully. "How old are you, mademoiselle?" 17, you answer. He nods. "My daughter was 17. She carried messages for us in Toulouse. The Germans caught her last month." He doesn't need to say more. His eyes tell the rest of the story. "I'm sorry," you whisper. "Everyone has lost someone," he replies. "That's why we fight." The men leave before dawn, melting back into the rainy darkness. You help clean away all evidence they were ever there, then try to sleep for the few hours remaining before farm chores begin again. November brings news that makes even Marcel's stoic face light up with hope. The Allies have landed in Italy. American and British forces are fighting their way up the peninsula. First Sicily, now Italy, Marcel says. France will be next. When? Claudette asks eagerly. "Not soon enough," Marie mutters, thinking of another winter under occupation. But the proximity of Allied forces energizes the resistance. More supply drops from British planes, more coordinated attacks on German convoys, more young men slipping away to join the Maquis rather than submit to the Stowe. The Germans respond with increased savagery. Public executions, mass arrests, whole villages punished for the actions of a few. December arrives with bitter cold and news of more atrocities. A Maquis attack killed 3 German officers near Bordeaux. In retaliation, the Germans rounded up and shot 27 civilians. "This is how they lose," your mother says quietly when you hear the news. "When they make us hate them so much that no one is neutral anymore." Christmas 1943 is a subdued affair. Much like the previous year, a small feast cobbled together from hidden stores. Gifts made rather than bought. Your mother has knitted scarves for everyone from Wool, Marie, bartered from a neighboring farm. The radio brings news of Allied bombing campaigns over Germany. The Russians continuing to push the German army back on the Eastern Front. It seems impossible that the occupation can last much longer. Yet it does last. January 1944 arrives with snowstorms and increased German paranoia. More checkpoints, more searches, more arrests. They know invasion is coming, Marcel says. They're trying to crush the resistance before the Allies land. February brings a blow that shakes even Marcel's resolve. The mayor of a nearby town, a key resistance contact, is arrested along with his entire family. A week later, word comes that they've all been deported to Germany. "We're being betrayed," Marcel says grimly. "Someone is informing." Suspicion spreads to resistance networks like poison. Who can be trusted? Who might be giving names to the Germans? Longtime neighbors eye each other warily. Even within your household, conversations become more guarded. March brings a letter from Thomas, the first direct word you've had from your brother in nearly a year, like your father's letter. It comes through the resistance network, passed hand to hand until it reaches your mother. "I'm with a group near the Spanish border." He writes, "We're preparing for something important this spring. Tell Emily her big brother misses her, but is doing necessary work. Tell her I'm fighting for her future." Your mother cries when she reads it. Tears of both pride and fear. Your brother is alive, but in constant danger. Like so many French families, yours is scattered, fractured by war and occupation. April 1944 arrives with a sense of impending change. Everyone can feel it. The occupation has entered its final, most dangerous phase. The Germans know they're losing. Marcel tells you one evening as you help him repair farm equipment, "But they'll make us pay dearly before they leave." This prophecy proves tragically accurate. A German convoy is ambushed near Lyon. Leaving 12 soldiers dead, the Germans surround the nearest village. Oradour-sur-Glane, allegedly a resistance stronghold. Men are shot in barns and garages. Women and children are locked in the church, which is set on fire. In all, 642 civilians are massacred. The news sweeps through the countryside, leaving horror and renewed determination in its wake. This is what we're fighting, Marcel says, his voice shaking with rage. This is why we can't give up, no matter the cost. May 1944. Allied planes fill the skies over France with increasing frequency. Supply drops to the resistance become more numerous. German troops begin to move toward the coast, anticipating an invasion. It's coming, Marcel says, listening to the BBC's coded messages late one night. The Allies are coming. At the farm, final preparations are being made. Hidden weapons are checked and cleaned. Escape routes confirmed. Safe houses established. The resistance groups your father and brother belong to are in contact with Allied commanders, ready to support the invasion when it comes. And then? You ask your mother, she sighs, looking out the window at fields planted under occupation, tended in fear and defiance. Then we rebuild, Emily, everything the Germans have destroyed. Our cities, our communities, our trust in each other. It will take years, but we'll be together again as a family. Your mother takes your hand, her skin rough from farm work, her grip still somehow gentle. Yes, whatever happens, we'll find each other again. Outside, spring blooms across the French countryside. Birds nest, oblivious to human conflicts. Wheat grows in fields that have seen blood spilled and tears shed. Nature's cycles continue despite everything. Inside the farmhouse, your French family prepares for invasion, for liberation, for whatever comes next in this long, terrible struggle. Together, you wait for the moment when France will belong to the French again. That moment is coming. You can feel it in the air, like the electricity before a storm. After 4 years of occupation, change is on the horizon, and you'll be ready when it comes winter in rural France. Early 1944. The air has a different feel now. Tense, expectant, like the pause before lightning strikes. In your cozy bed, so far from the Beaumont family in occupied France, you can't imagine the bone-deep cold they faced, or how the silence of snow-covered fields could feel so threatening. The wireless sits on the kitchen table, surrounded by your family mother, Uncle Marcel, Aunt Marie, Cousin Claudette. It's past curfew. Being caught with a radio tuned to the BBC would mean deportation or worse. But no one even considers not listening. Messages personnels, says the announcer in a crisp London accent. Personal messages to our friends. Then come the coded phrases. Meaningless to most, but pregnant with significance for resistance cells across France. Asterisk, the cat sleeps by the fire. Jean-Paul has lost his hat. The baker's daughter wears blue ribbons. Asterisk, Marcel nods at one particular message. Your mother raises an eyebrow in question, but he shakes his head slightly. Better she doesn't know the specifics. Plausible deniability, they call it now. Back then it was just survival. After the broadcast, Marcel pulls on his coat. Don't wait up, he tells Marie. Kissing her weathered cheek, be careful, she says. The same words she said hundreds of times over the past 3 years. He nods, then slips out into the darkness. Another night meeting with the Maquis. Another mission. Another risk. Will this ever end? Claudette asks after he's gone, her voice small in the quiet kitchen. Your mother's face is tired but determined in the lamplight. Yes, this year, I think. The Germans are losing ground everywhere now. Then why are they getting worse here? Claudette persists. The executions, the deportations. Because they're desperate, your mother answers. And desperate men are dangerous. The desperation is evident everywhere. German patrols stop people randomly on country roads. Checking papers, searching bags, propaganda posters appear even in small villages. Warning of the terrorist gangs in the forest. Their turn for the Maquis fighters. Collaborators grow bolder, thinking the Germans might reward their loyalty when the final reckoning comes. You've seen it at the market in the village, the way Madame Fournier, who sells German officers the best cuts of illegal meat, now openly mocks families of known resistance members. The way young women who've taken German lovers walk proudly arm in arm with them through the square, accepting the cold stares of neighbors as the price of full stomachs and warm homes. "I'd rather starve," Marie muttered last week when you passed one such woman. Her hair freshly styled, her coat new and clean amid the shabby clothing of everyone else. But it's easy to judge from the relative safety of the farm, where hidden food stores mean you don't face true starvation. In the cities, where people are eating cats and pigeons, such moral clarity must be harder to maintain. Marcel returns just before dawn, muddy and exhausted as usual, but with an unusual brightness in his eyes. "It was a good night," is all he'll say at breakfast. But later you overhear him telling your mother, "3 trucks of German ammunition that won't reach the Atlantic Wall, and we got away clean." The Atlantic Wall, the massive fortifications the Germans are building along the French coastline to repel the invasion everyone knows is coming. The forced labor of thousands of Frenchmen, supplemented by prisoners and conscripted workers from all over occupied Europe. That afternoon, while you're collecting eggs in the barn, the sound of aircraft makes you step outside, shading your eyes against the weak winter sunlight. Not German planes, these are different. Allied bombers flying high overhead, dozens of them, headed toward the coast. "They're bombing the Atlantic Wall," Marcel says when he joins you, watching the silver specks disappear into the distance. Softening it up, that night, more coded messages on the BBC. The next morning, Marcel is gone again, taking the farm's horse and wagon. "Supplies coming," is all Marie will say when you ask where he's gone. You know what this means. An Allied airdrop, weapons, medicine, RADIO equipment dropped by parachute to the Maquis, who must quickly distribute and hide the material before German patrols find it. Marcel returns after dark with the wagon apparently empty. But later, you glimpse him and your mother in the root cellar, carefully storing packages wrapped in oilcloth beneath the floorboards. February brings heavy snow and increased German activity. Roadblocks appear overnight. Patrols sweep through forests where Maquis groups are suspected of hiding. People disappear from neighboring villages arrested for resistance activities, or sometimes simply for being related to someone suspected of resistance. "They took the Martin family last night," Marie reports, after returning from the village. "Even the grandmother, who can barely walk. Why?" You ask, though you already know. Their son was caught with resistance pamphlets in Lyon. The Germans' policy of collective punishment taken family members when they can't catch the resistance fighters themselves has become more widespread as their control slips. It's meant to discourage resistance, to make people think twice about the cost to loved ones. Instead, it drives more people into active resistance. What's left to lose when they've already taken your family? March brings thaws, turning roads to mud and making travel difficult for everyone, resistance and Germans alike. But the radio brings heartening news. The Allies are advancing in Italy. The Russians continue pushing west, and most importantly, Allied aircraft dominate the skies over France. Now, when I was a child, my grandfather told stories about the Prussians in 1870. Your mother says one evening as you all sit around the kitchen table, how everyone thought they were invincible. But they left eventually. The Germans will too. The next day, while you're helping Marcel repair a fence, a familiar figure emerges from the woods, Jean. The Maquis contact you've seen occasionally over the past year. But something's wrong. He's staggering, clutching his side. Marcel runs to him, catches him as he collapses. Germans. Jean gasps as Marcel half carries him toward the barn. Ambush at the Laurent farm. Everyone dead? You run ahead to clear a space in the hay. Marcel lays Jean down, pulls back his coat to reveal a spreading bloodstain. "Get your mother," Marcel tells you. No one else. You run to the house, heart pounding. Your mother follows you back to the barn without question. medical supplies in hand. One look at Jean's wound, and her face turns grim. Bullet passed through, but he's lost a lot of blood, she says, cutting away at his shirt. And if the Germans are sweeping the area, Marcel nods. We need to move him tonight. Once it's dark, Jean shakes his head weakly. No time. They're coming this way. Checking all the farms. Marcel's face hardens. How many? 15, maybe 20, with dogs. How far behind you? Jean coughs, a spray of red misting his lips. Hour, maybe less. Marcel stands. Decision made. Emily, go to the house. Tell Marie to start packing. Just essentials. Claudette knows the escape route to the charcoal hut. You'll leave in 20 minutes. And Jean? Your mother asks, still working on the wounded man. Marcel's eyes meet hers, and something passes between them. An understanding built on years of hardship and shared purpose. I'll stay with him, Marcel says. We'll lead the Germans away from your escape route if we can. Your mother nods, then turns back to Jean. Let me at least stop the bleeding before we go. You run to the house, gasping out Marcel's instructions to Marie. She doesn't panic, doesn't ask questions, just starts gathering food, water, warm clothing. What about Uncle Marcel? Claudette asks as she stuffs supplies into a knapsack. He's staying behind, you tell her, unable to keep the fear from your voice. Claudette stills, understanding immediately, with the wounded man. But if the Germans find them, Marie cuts her off. Your uncle knows what he's doing. Now hurry. 20 minutes later, you're at the edge of the forest with your mother. Marie and Claudette, Marcel has joined you to say goodbye. His hunting rifle slung over his shoulder, his old army pistol tucked in his belt. Head straight for the charcoal hut, he tells Claudette. No detours, no stopping. Once you're there, stay put until someone comes with the password. The cherries are ripe this year. Marie recites, but the birds have taken most. Claudette responds. Marcel kisses his wife, then your mother. Then you and Claudette. Go now, don't look back. The forest in late winter is a skeletal place. Bare branches, patches of dirty snow, mud sucking at your shoes. Claudette leads the way along a barely visible path. You struggle to keep up, your city-bred lungs burning in the cold air, despite months of farm work. Behind you, in the distance, you hear dogs barking. The German patrol has reached the farm. Faster, your mother urges, though she's breathing as hard as you are. You trek through the forest for what feels like hours, but is probably only 45 minutes. Finally, Claudette stops at a small clearing where a dilapidated stone hut squats beneath massive oak trees. The charcoal maker's hut, she says. We're here. Inside, the hut is cold and damp. With a dirt floor and a crude fireplace, Marie immediately sets about making it defensible, checking sight lines through cracks in the walls, arranging your supplies, assigning positions. No fire, she says when Claudette looks at the fireplace. Smoke would give us away. So you huddle together in the growing darkness, wrapped in all the clothing you brought, listening to the forest sounds and wondering what's happening back at the farm. Hours pass. Night falls completely. The temperature drops further. Your breath clouding before your faces. No one speaks. What is there to say? Then, sometime in the deepest part of the night, you hear it, gunfire, distant but unmistakable. First a few isolated shots, then a burst from what sounds like a machine gun. Marie grabs Claudette's hand. Your mother pulls you close against her side. The gunfire continues for perhaps 2 minutes. Then stops. The silence that follows is somehow worse. What do we do now? You whisper after a long time. We wait, Marie says, her voice steady despite everything. Like Marcel told us to. Dawn breaks gray and cheerless. You've spent the night drifting between uneasy sleep and anxious wakefulness. Everyone is stiff, cold, hungry. But no one complains. Around mid-morning, you hear someone approaching, branches snapping, footsteps crunching on patches of snow. Everyone freezes. Marie pulls out a small kitchen knife, the only weapon you have. A rhythmic knock at the door. 3 quick, 2 slow. The same pattern used by resistance members. Who's there? Marie calls, knife still ready. The cherries are ripe this year. Comes a man's voice, not Marcel's. Marie hesitates only slightly, but the birds have taken most. She opens the door to reveal a middle-aged man with a deeply lined face. You recognize him vaguely from the village, Monsieur Dubois, who runs the grain mill. "You need to come with me," he says without preamble. "It's not safe here anymore. The Germans are conducting sweeps through the whole forest." "My husband?" Marie asks, her voice suddenly thin. Dubois's face gives away the answer before he speaks. "I'm sorry. Both he and the wounded fighter were killed. The Germans burned the farm afterward." Marie makes a small, broken sound, the only sign of the devastation she must feel. Then she straightens her back. "We need to move, then. Where are you taking us?" "I have a cart hidden near the road. We'll go to my cousin's farm near Clermont. The resistance has a network there. As you gather your few belongings," your mother puts an arm around Marie's shoulders. "I'm so sorry. Marcel was a hero." Marie nods, her face set in grim lines. "He always said he would die rather than live under Germans forever." She looks at Claudette, whose eyes are brimming with tears. "Now we honor him by surviving." The journey to Dubois's hidden cart is tense. Every snapping twig might be a German patrol. Every distant sound might be tracking dogs. But you reach it without incident, and soon you're huddled in the back, concealed beneath sacks of grain as Dubois drives slowly along back roads. At one point, he stops suddenly. You hear voices speaking German. Then Dubois responding in careful, deferential French. A checkpoint. You hold your breath, pressing against your mother in terror. If they search the cart, but after a few tense minutes, you hear Dubois click his tongue at the horse, and the cart begins moving again. The checkpoint is passed. Late that evening, you arrive at another farm smaller than Marcel's, more isolated. The buildings clustered in a defensive arrangement that speaks of centuries of survival through various invasions and upheavals. A woman emerges as Dubois helps you down from the cart, Madame Travert, his cousin, who takes one look at your exhausted group and ushers you inside without questions. Over a meager but welcome meal, Dubois explains the current situation. The Germans are retaliating for increased resistance activity with savage reprisals. Not just burning farms and executing fighters, but deporting entire families to labor camps in Germany. They know they're losing the war, he says, but they're determined to punish France before they go. And the Allies? Your mother asks. The invasion? Coming soon, we think. The BBC messages have increased. Supply drops are more frequent. They're preparing us for something big. April arrives with a burst of spring growth that seems almost obscene in its beauty amid so much human suffering. You've settled into life at the Travert farm, helping with chores, keeping watch for German patrols, always ready to flee to the prearranged hiding place if danger approaches. Madame Travert is a widow. Her husband killed in the early days of the occupation for helping escaped prisoners of war. She has no children and seems grateful for the company despite the risk you represent. Marie has retreated into herself since Marcel's death, speaking little, working constantly as if physical exhaustion might blunt the emotional pain. Claudette sticks close to her mother, watching her anxiously. They've both aged years in weeks. Your own mother has taken on a leadership role among the refugees, organizing work schedules, maintaining contact with resistance members who occasionally visit the farm, planning for every contingency. We need to be ready to move at a moment's notice, she tells you one evening as you help her mend clothing. The situation changes daily now. Indeed, it does. The wireless brings news of increased Allied bombing along the coast. German units are being redeployed from all over France to reinforce the Atlantic Wall. The Vichy government is growing increasingly unstable as even collaborators sense which way the wind is blowing. May 1944. The air thrums with anticipation. More Allied aircraft overhead daily. Increased resistance attacks on railroads, bridges, communication lines, anything that might hamper German response to the coming invasion. And more brutal reprisals, villages razed, mass executions. A level of violence that suggests the Germans know their time in France is limited and are determined to inflict maximum damage before they leave. One morning, a resistance courier arrives at the farm with news that makes even your stoic mother pale. The Germans rounded up an entire Maquis group near Limoges. He tells your small group gathered in the barn. Someone betrayed them. They were all executed. 27 men. He pauses. And then the Germans went to their home villages and arrested their families. Over 100 people deported to Germany. Who betrayed them? Madame Travert asks, her voice hard. The courier shakes his head. We don't know yet. But we will find out that night. You overhear your mother and Madame Travert talking in low voices about the growing problem of collaboration. Not just the obvious kind, the French police who help with arrests. The officials who implement German policies, but the quiet, insidious kind, neighbors informing on neighbors. People settling old scores by denouncing rivals as resistance sympathizers. The occupation corrupts everything it touches, Madame Travert says bitterly. Even after the Germans leave, we'll be dealing with what they've done to us for generations. Late May brings word of your father. Alive, still with his Maquis group, now operating closer to the coast, where they're preparing to support the Allied invasion. No news of Thomas, though, which makes your mother's face tight with worry when she thinks no one is looking. Your brother can take care of himself, she tells you when she catches you watching her. He always could, but you both know that survival in occupied France has as much to do with luck as with skill or caution. One wrong move, one moment of bad timing, one betrayal, that's all it takes. June 1944 arrives with a sense of electric tension in the air. Everyone feels it, from the resistance fighters who pass through the farm with increasing frequency to the villagers who watch German convoys rushing toward the coast. It's coming, Dubois says when he visits. Any day now, on the night of June 5th. The BBC broadcast includes an unusual number of coded messages. Marcel listens with intent concentration, then turns to your mother. Tomorrow, he says simply, or the day after. They're telling all resistance groups to be ready. No one sleeps much that night. You lie awake in the small attic room you share with Claudette, listening to the distant rumble that might be thunder or might be bombing along the coast. The line between them has blurred after years of war. Morning brings the news via a breathless resistance courier who arrives just after dawn. It's happened, he announces to the household gathered in the kitchen. The Allies have landed in Normandy. Thousands of ships, paratroopers. It's really happening, for a moment. No one speaks after 4 years of occupation. The beginning of the end has arrived. It seems almost impossible to grasp. Then Marie begins to cry. The first tears you've seen from her since Marcel's death. Not tears of grief this time, but of relief, of hope. Marcel should be here for this, she says, wiping her eyes. He always said they'd come eventually. Now the real fighting begins, Dubois says grimly. The Germans won't leave easily. He's right. Over the following days, news filters in of fierce battles along the Normandy coast. The Allies are advancing, but slowly, at great cost. The Germans are fighting with the desperation of those who know defeat means reckoning for years of atrocities. And in the countryside, the simmering conflict between resistance and occupiers explodes into open warfare. Maquis groups attack German convoys trying to reach the front. The Germans retaliate with mass executions and burn villages 2 weeks after D-Day. Another courier arrives at the farm with news specifically for your mother. "Your husband asked me to find you," he tells her. "He's with a Maquis group that's harassing German units near Caen. He's alive and well. And he wants you to know they're pushing the Germans back every day." Your mother's face transforms at this news. "And my son? Thomas Beaumont. Have you heard anything of him?" The courier hesitates. "He was with a group in the south last I heard. Fighting is heavy there. 2. It's not much, but it's something. Your father is alive. Thomas might be. And the Germans are finally being driven from France." That night, you sit outside with your mother, looking up at stars partially obscured by clouds. The same stars that shine over your father somewhere to the north, over Thomas somewhere to the south, over all of France as it begins the painful process of liberation. Will we go home to Paris when this is over? You ask. Your mother considers this, her face thoughtful in the dim light. "I'm not sure Paris is home anymore," she says finally. "So much has changed. We've changed. You think about this. About the girl you were when the occupation began and the young woman you've become after 4 years of hardship. Fear and resistance. Where is home then?" Your mother puts an arm around your shoulders. "Wherever we're together again. Your father, Thomas, you and me. That's home now." The summer night wraps around you both, warm and alive with the sounds of insects and distant birdsong. France is still occupied, still suffering, still fighting. The end hasn't come yet, but for the first time in 4 long years, the end is in sight, and beyond it, the chance to rebuild, to heal, to find home again, whatever that might mean now. The stars continue their patient journey across the sky, somewhere to the north. Allied tanks advance meter by hard-fought meter, somewhere in between. Your father fights alongside men who've become a different kind of family. And here on this small farm that has become a temporary refuge, you wait for the day when waiting will finally end. It's coming, not today, not tomorrow, but soon. After 4 years of darkness, dawn is breaking over occupied France, and you'll be there to see it. The summer of 1944 unfolds in a strange mixture of hope and horror. Each day brings news of Allied advances. Small villages liberated, German units retreating, but also stories of desperate last stands, of collaborators fleeing, of scores being settled in the chaotic spaces between occupation and freedom. From the relative safety of the Travert farm, you watch as history rewrites itself around you. Your comfortable bed and quiet room are worlds away from the tension of these days, when liberation feels so close yet somehow still out of reach. The Americans have taken Cherbourg, Dubois reports one evening in late June, his face alight with excitement after returning from a meeting with other resistance members. The Germans are falling back all along the Normandy front, but the Germans aren't simply retreating. They're fighting viciously for every kilometer, destroying what they can't hold, punishing those who celebrate too soon. The violence has a different quality now, reactive. Vengeful, the lashing out of a wounded animal, rather than the calculated terror of earlier years. July brings sweltering heat and news that Paris might soon be liberated. German administrative units are already evacuating the capital, burning documents, preparing for departure. But combat units remain, and rumors spread of plans to destroy the city rather than surrender it intact. They wouldn't, your mother says when she hears this. Not Paris, but you've all seen enough of German brutality to know they absolutely would. Early August, the farm routine continues tending animals. working fields, maintaining the necessary appearance of ordinary life. But everything has a provisional quality now, as if you're all just going through the motions, while waiting for real life to resume. The BBC brings news of an Allied landing in southern France, Operation Dragoon, a second invasion, forcing the Germans to fight on two fronts within France itself. They're caught in a vice now, Dubois says with grim satisfaction. Squeezed from north and south, on August 15th, a resistance courier arrives with news that sends a jolt through your household. Paris is rising, he tells you, accepting a cup of water after his long bicycle journey. The police have gone on strike, the railway workers too. People are building barricades in the streets, but the Allies haven't reached Paris yet, your mother says, her face tight with worry. If the city rises too soon, the courier nods, understanding her fear. The resistance leaders are trying to coordinate with the Allied commanders. But the people are taking matters into their own hands. Now you think of your old neighborhood in Paris. The narrow streets, the ancient buildings, barricades, fighting, your neighbor's the butcher, who always snuck you an extra slice of sausage. The old woman who fed pigeons in the square, the cafe owner who knew everyone's names and stories. Are they building barricades? Taking up arms? After 4 years of enduring occupation, are they now risking everything in these final days? The next week passes in a fever of anticipation. News comes in fragments, sometimes contradictory. The Germans are abandoning Paris. The Germans are reinforcing Paris. The Americans are racing toward the city. The Americans have been ordered to bypass Paris and push eastward. And underneath it all, the constant question. Asterisk, what about your father? What about Thomas? Where are they in this chaotic endgame of occupation? Asterisk, August 25th dawns hot and cloudless. You're in the vegetable garden with Claudette, pulling late summer carrots, when Madame Travert calls from the house, her voice carrying an unusual note of excitement. Come quickly. The radio. You drop your tools and run. Claudette right behind you, in the kitchen. Everyone is gathered around the wireless, faces intent. The announcer's voice is almost breaking with emotion. Paris is free. The German garrison surrendered this afternoon to Free French forces under General Leclerc. Allied troops are now entering the city. The capital of France is once again in French hands. For a moment, no one speaks. After 4 years of occupation, the words seem almost impossible to comprehend. Paris free, then your mother begins to cry. Not the quiet tears of grief, but great heaving sobs of relief. Marie puts her arms around her, her own face wet. Claudette grabs your hand, squeezing so hard it hurts. We made it, Madame Travert says quietly. We lived to see it that evening. There's wine with dinner, a precious bottle Madame Travert had hidden since 1940, saving for exactly this moment, even with careful rationing. There's just enough for everyone to have a small glass. To Paris, Marie proposes, raising her glass, and to all who fought for her freedom, and to those who didn't live to see this day, your mother adds, her thoughts clearly with Marceau. You sip the wine. Its flavor complex and unfamiliar after years of deprivation. Paris is free. The thought keeps repeating in your mind. Too enormous to fully absorb. Paris is free. But what now? The war isn't over. Much of France remains under German control. The fighting continues to the east, and your family is still scattered. Father with the Maquis near Normandy, Thomas somewhere in the south, you and your mother in hiding on a remote farm. The answer comes 3 days later in the form of a resistance messenger who arrives dusty and tired at dusk. I'm looking for Madame Beaumont, he says after Madame Travert cautiously opens the door. Your mother steps forward. I am she. He hands her a folded paper. From your husband. With trembling fingers, your mother unfolds the note. You watch her face as she reads, the flicker of emotions, the way her hand rises to cover her mouth, the tears that spring to her eyes. Henry is alive, she says, looking up at you. He's in Paris with his Maquet group. They've joined with the Free French Forces, she reads on. He says we should come to Paris as soon as travel is possible. He'll be waiting at our apartment. And Thomas? You ask. Your mother scans the note again. No word, but your father has contacts now. People who can help search for him. September brings cooling air and the gradual restoration of order in liberated areas. Roads reopen, trains begin running, though schedules are erratic. The Germans continue retreating eastward, but many pockets of resistance remain. You help Madame Trevert with the early harvest, working alongside her in the fields as you've done for over a year now. She's become a second mother to you in many ways, teaching you things your city upbringing never included. How to tell when vegetables are ready to pick, how to preserve food for winter, how to read the weather in the movement of clouds. What will you do after we leave? You ask her one afternoon as you work side by side digging potatoes. She straightens, pressing one hand to her lower back. What I've always done, farm this land. It was my husband's family's land for 5 generations before the Germans shot him. It will be here long after they're gone, alone. Though, she gives you a small smile. I was alone before you came. I'll manage again. She looks out over her fields, expression softening. Besides, I'm never truly alone here. Every tree, every stone, every patch of soil, they all hold memories. 2 weeks later, Dubois confirms that travel to Paris is possible. Though still difficult, military traffic has priority on many roads, and checkpoints remain as Allied forces search for collaborators fleeing justice and German soldiers left behind in the retreat. I can take you as far as Lyons, he offers. There's a train from there to Paris. It's running again. More or less, your mother accepts gratefully. The next morning, you say goodbye to the Travert farm, to Marie and Claudette, who will return to their own farm now that it's safe, to Madame Trevert, who hugs you fiercely and makes you promise to visit after the war is truly over. You're always welcome here, she tells you, pressing a small package into your hand's precious seeds from her garden for you to plant wherever you settle. Remember, the journey to Paris takes 3 days, a day by cart to Lyons, then 2 days by train, with frequent stops and detours around damaged tracks. The countryside rolling past the train windows shows the scars of war. Bombed bridges, burned villages, fields cratered by artillery. But there are signs of renewal, too. Farmers in their fields, harvesting what they can from the disrupted growing season. Children playing in village squares. French flags flying from church steeples and town halls, and everywhere graffiti. Asterisk Vive la France. Mort aux collaborators. Asterisk the expressions of a people emerging from 4 years of occupation. Finding their voice again, the train approaches Paris in late afternoon. The city silhouetted against a reddening sky. Your mother grips your hand tightly as the familiar landmarks come into view. The Eiffel Tower, the dome of Sacré-Cœur, the spires of Notre Dame. Home, she whispers. But the Paris that greets you is both familiar and strange. Buildings you've known all your life stand unchanged next to others reduced to rubble by bombs or fighting. The streets are full of military vehicles, American jeeps, French tanks, British trucks alongside the bicycles and horse carts of civilians. Soldiers in various uniforms mingle with Parisians, and the people thin, shabby, but with an energy you haven't seen in years. Women with their heads shaved shamefully for collaborating with Germans walk quickly. Eyes downcast, past groups of celebrating resistance fighters. Children chase each other through ruins. Old men sit in cafe chairs pulled onto sidewalks, watching it all with weary eyes. You make your way through streets you once knew blindfolded, but now must navigate around barricades, bomb craters, and collapsed buildings. The journey to your old neighborhood seems to take hours, though it's probably only 40 minutes. And then suddenly, you're there. Your street, your building. Still standing though, pockmarked by bullet holes. The shop on the ground floor, your father's shop, has broken windows. The shelves empty, but the sign still hangs. Beaumont Fine Foods and Groceries. Your mother stops, staring at the building, her face working with emotion. "We're really here," she says softly. You climb the familiar stairs past neighbors' doors, some sealed with official-looking notices, others standing open to reveal abandoned apartments. Finally, your own door. Your mother's hand trembles as she reaches for the handle. Locked, of course, she knocks, tentative at first, then more firmly. Footsteps approach from inside. A pause, then the door swings open. Your father stands there, thinner, grayer, with new lines etched into his face, but unmistakably himself, for a long moment. He simply stares at you both, as if unable to believe his eyes. "Jean," he says finally, his voice cracking. "Emily." Then you're in his arms, all three of you holding each other, crying and laughing at once, after 4 years of separation. Fear, hardship, you're together again. The apartment as much as you remember it, though colder, dustier, emptier. Your father has been back only a week himself, finding the place looted of anything valuable, but structurally intact. The Germans used the building to house officers. He explains as you all sit at the kitchen table drinking ersatz coffee that tastes like luxury after your journey. That probably saved it from the worst damage. He tells you about his time with the Maquis, the hardships, the constant movement, the small victories and painful losses. How his group joined with Allied forces after D-Day, helping guide them through unfamiliar terrain, identifying German positions, disrupting enemy communications. "We liberated villages that had been under occupation for 4 years," he says, a quiet pride in his voice. "Saw children who'd never known freedom suddenly running in the streets, waving French flags." "And Thomas?" Your mother asks, the question that's been hanging between you all. Your father's face grows serious. No direct word yet, but he was with a Maquis group in the Workers region. They fought hard there. Too hard, maybe. The Germans surrounded them in July, brought in aircraft. Special mountain troops. "Henry, please," your mother whispers, her hand clutching yours under the table. "I don't know for certain," your father says gently, "but many of the fighters escaped into the mountains. Thomas is resourceful, and I have friends looking for him. Former resistance members now working with the provisional government. If he's alive, we'll find him." That night, you sleep in your old bedroom for the first time in over 2 years. The mattress is thin and lumpy, the blankets musty, but it's yours. Through the window, you can see the Paris skyline. Some buildings lit for the first time since 1940, others dark and silent. Liberation, you're learning, is not the neat, happy ending of storybooks. It's messy, complicated, full of joy and grief intermingled. For every family reunited like yours, others remain separated or have discovered their loved ones will never return. For every collaborator facing justice, innocent people suffer in the chaotic settling of scores. And the war isn't over. German forces still occupy parts of eastern France. Fighting continues along a front that moves steadily eastward. Young Frenchmen, including those who fought in the resistance, are now being incorporated into regular army units to continue the push into Germany itself. October brings colder weather and the gradual re-establishment of normal life in Paris. Shops reopen, though with limited goods. Schools resume classes. Your father works with other former resistance members to locate missing persons. including Thomas. You help your mother restore the apartment, scouring black markets for essentials, standing in ration lines that are still a fact of life despite liberation. Food remains scarce. The retreating Germans destroyed much of the harvest, and transportation networks are still disrupted. But there's a different feeling now. The privation has purpose, an end in sight. Every small improvement, a repaired window, a functioning water pump, a fresh loaf of bread feels like a victory. One evening, as you're helping your father sort through papers in what was once his shop, planning its eventual reopening, there's a knock at the door. Your mother answers it, then calls out, her voice strange. "Henry!" "Emily, come quickly." You follow your father to the apartment door. Standing in the hallway is a young man in a battered French army uniform, thin and bearded, but with familiar eyes. "Thomas," your father says incredulously. Your brother manages a tired smile. "Hello, Papa." Then he's enveloped in your father's embrace. Your mother pressing kisses to his face, you hanging back slightly, hardly able to believe this moment has finally arrived. The Beaumont family, together again after 4 years of occupation, separation and struggle. Later, around the kitchen table that has seen so much of your family's history, Thomas tells his story. The resistance group in the south, the brutal German assault on the Verkers Plateau, his escape into the mountains with a handful of other fighters, weeks of hiding, moving only at night, eventually connecting with Allied forces advancing from the Mediterranean. "They gave us a choice," he says. "Go home, or join the regular army and continue the fight. I enlisted, wanted to see it through to the end. And now?" Your mother asks. Thomas glances at your father. 2 weeks leave, then back to my unit. We're advancing toward the German border. He pauses. "It's not over yet." Your mother's face shows the conflict joy at having her son home, fear of losing him again, but she simply nods. After everything France has endured, the job must be finished. November 1944. The first real autumn after liberation. Paris is slowly healing, though shortages continue and ruins still punctuate the cityscape. Thomas has returned to his unit. Your father splits his time between rebuilding his business and helping locate missing resistance members. Your mother works with neighborhood committees, distributing what supplies are available. And you, after years of simply trying to survive, the question of your future suddenly presents itself. The schools have reopened. You could resume your education, interrupted by occupation, or perhaps find work. There's no shortage of rebuilding to be done in liberated France. What do you want to do, Emily? Your father asks one evening as you walk together along the Seine, the setting sun painting the damaged but enduring city in gold. You consider the question carefully. You're no longer the girl who watched German troops enter Paris in 1940. The occupation has changed you, as it has changed everyone who lived through it. "I want to help rebuild," you say finally. "Not just buildings, people. Communities." You think of Madame Travert alone on her farm, Marie and Claudette continuing without Marcel, all the broken families, the damaged lives. So much has been destroyed. Your father nods, understanding. "That work will take a lifetime," he says. For all of us, you walk in silence for a while, watching the river flow past, timeless and indifferent to human conflicts. Paris has survived the Romans, the Huns, the English, the Prussians. It will survive this too. "The Germans took so much from us," you say. "Years we can't get back. People who will never return." Yes, your father agrees. But they couldn't take everything. He stops, turning to face you. "They couldn't take what makes us French. Our dignity, our culture, our humanity, not completely. We held on to enough to rebuild from. As darkness falls over Paris, no blackout curtains now. Just the natural end of day. You think about those who didn't live to see liberation. Uncle Marcel, the mayor of your village and his family, the Weiss family taken in the night, countless others whose names you'll never know, but you think too, of the countless small acts of resistance that sustained the spirit of France through 4 years of occupation. The baker who slipped extra bread to hungry children, the farmer who hid food from requisition officers, the ordinary people who chose dignity over collaboration, even when it cost them dearly. That night, as you prepare for bed in your childhood room, now both familiar and strange, you look out your window at the Paris skyline. The Eiffel Tower stands illuminated for the first time in years, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The occupation has ended, but its shadows remain. In the ruins of buildings, in the missing faces around dinner tables, in the nightmares that still wake you in the small hours, these shadows will fade gradually over years and decades, but never disappear completely. Yet, as you settle into your bed, pulling the blankets up against the autumn chill, you feel something that's been absent for a very long time. Asterisk peace. Asterisk, not the complete peace of a world without conflict that still lies in the future, but the personal peace of being home, of family reunited, of survival against overwhelming odds.